morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Opposition Leader Press Conference. The Opposition Leader will be making a statement, after which he'll be taking questions. Bharrat Jagdeo.
Right. Well, thank you very much. In 8 days' time, we will be observing the anniversary of 50 years as an independent nation. And if I do not engage the press before that date, I want to wish all Guyanese the best in life and reflections on that day. And I know that many people across our country are going to celebrate. I want to wish them well. I know that many people abroad are celebrating our 50th anniversary. And I hope that they too would have a good time. And even those who are facing severe hardships now because of the economy or personal tragedies, I do hope that they will understand the true meaning of these celebrations, and that they will, in their own way, find time to think about our country and how far it has come and where we are going. It is, many people ask me whether we will be celebrating as a party and as members of parliament in the opposition our independence, 50th anniversary of our independence. And I have been on public record saying yes, however, we will do so in a manner that we think befit the occasion. And so we will be attending the flag raising ceremony because we believe that that is a very important event. And we do hope that on that occasion that the President would not miss the opportunity to talk extensively, not just about our past, but about our future. I think the opportunity was missed in the National Assembly when he addressed us. Maybe in an attempt to avoid controversy, the President did not really explore in his speech the challenges that we have faced as a pre-independent country, the struggles that we had to gain independence, the sacrifices that many Guyanese made to achieve that status. It was not handed to us on a platter by the British. We had to struggle for independence. I thought also that he would have used the opportunity to explore the role of the central figures who led that struggle. Chedi Jagan and even Burnham, because our country attained independence with him as Prime Minister. And as controversial as people may view the role, it's always debatable depending on which side of the fence you stand on. Whether you're APNU or PPP supporters, people's views about the role of these two central figures differ. Nevertheless, we have to explore the role that they play played in the independence process, and the thousands of others who followed them and who made, some of them, the ultimate sacrifices, who ended up in jail, whose families were destroyed, who were harassed by the British. Their role too need to be explored and documented in this period. We will do injustice to that generation if we do not explore at great length the role that they played. And I noticed neither of the two names were mentioned in the president's speech to the parliament. It could be because he was trying to avoid controversy, as I said before. But I do hope that that will happen in the independence address on the 25th, and that he will be maybe kind to the role of both of these people, regardless of which side he stands on now, because they played a very important role in the freedom of our country. And we do need to explore and debate our entire history, the periods when we did well and the periods when we did badly, and maybe talk a bit more about the reasons why we did well in some periods and why we did badly in other periods. Even just to draw out or to isolate from those periods the best practices and best experiences and the best policies, so that we can use them again in the future. So we need to trace the economic history of our country through various periods, the challenges our economy faced in the past. We need to trace the political history of our country. And so I was a bit disappointed that the president would have mentioned 18 years of no elections, local government elections, when he knew that the party that he represents now was a major contributor to the delay. But even if he wanted to lay the blame on the PPP, you cannot mention 18 years of lack of democracy at the local level in an 50th independence anniversary address to the National Assembly, and not talk about the 3 decades of no democracy in this country, when that has been so well documented locally and globally by independent parties. And I think, excepting for the few hardcore supporters of one party, it is widely accepted that that was so, that we had almost 3 decades of undemocratic rule. And then in the post-1992 period, the return to democracy, when our country returned to democracy, to look again at the challenges our young fledgling democratic country faced in building the institutions that would safeguard our freedoms and our rights. And so the move back to have an independent judiciary, where there would have been an external review of decisions made in Guyana, because prior to us taking the country back to the Caribbean Court of Justice, our Court of Appeal was the final court. And especially given the impasse surrounding the appointment of the Chancellor and the Chief Justice. For so many years, the security of tenure of those positions, which the new constitution was designed to enhance, suffered because people were not confirmed, appointed substantively in those posts, and we hope that he will return early to that process to have substantive appointments in those posts. But that was an early challenge. And then to make Parliament work again. And so apart from the serious constitutional changes which brought Parliament in the center of governance, for example, Parliament with the committees that were set up to review government decisions, the standing committees, the 5 standing committees. Parliament now has a role in appointing people to the service commissions, the 4 service commissions. Parliament has a role in, or both sides have a role in the management of Parliament through the Parliamentary Management Committee. Tons of other changes were made in that process. That the challenges we faced along that way, and then the violence surrounding elections that we've had in the post-1992 period, particularly when those elections were pronounced free and fair by at least five international organizations which we have invited at every elections: the European Union, the Commonwealth, the Carter Center, OAS, CARICOM, or more recently UNASUR. So politically, I was hoping that all of these things would have been explored, because apart from the economic history, the political history of our country. And then he mentioned a very important thing about us moving away from ethnic arithmetic and the whole trust for social cohesion. But social cohesion, for it to work, has to take cognizance of our history, even from the perspective of not repeating mistakes that we made in the past, and to distill, as I said earlier, lessons from that past. But more importantly, now that he is president, and this is one of his main planks that he campaigned on, and he speaks often about, that he would have outlined to the Parliament a set of concrete measures to achieve social cohesion, which were absent in his speech, and I hope will be corrected in the address to the nation. And to ensure that at the very start of his, or the foundation of his policy on social cohesion should be that practice must match the rhetoric. That should be the underpinning philosophy, because we have been on record saying that the president preaches social cohesion, but when you examine the reality on the ground, what his government practices, the exclusion based on politics and race has never been as bad as this. Never been as bad. And we have tons of cases to prove that. I want to give you one example of an early statement that the president made when he just assumed office. He said that people had no reason to fear if they act professionally. And that particularly with the Foreign Service, we're told that career officers would not be harmed, that those who are political appointees would have cause to worry more, because particularly those who are political appointees placed abroad. Let's look at the New York consulate. Mr. Evans has been a member of the PPP for ages, and he is a political appointee. He spoke on our platform. He's still there. The career officer, Khan, was removed, and 5 other persons, 4 of Indo-Guyanese origin and 1 person who was seen as Afro-Guyanese, who was seen as sympathetic to us, was removed from the office. So the political person who has been with us for a while, and it's known he is a member, he has maintained his job. The career officer was terminated. And many others, drivers, etc. These are drivers, ordinary people, clerical staff, etc., who were removed from the office. I am giving you a specific example. I can give many others. I don't want to, to do that at this point in time, just to say that your rhetoric must match practice for it to be believed. And so the social cohesion, from the time the president leaves the assembly, you see the crudity of the behavior of the people that he has representing him. And they talk about, you can hear the shouts across the aisle, this is our time now. And the suspension of the standing orders, that doesn't build social cohesion. It doesn't build to pass through everything through the National Assembly in a manner that is not just unparliamentary, it is just downright undemocratic. And it's not practiced anywhere across the world. We had discussions with many of the MPs who came from other jurisdictions here recently, and they were very surprised at the practice. 9 times in a year that the standing orders have been suspending to have a bill of a complex nature go through all 3 readings. When this was done under the PPP in 10 years, about 6 times in 10 years. And it was considered we were undemocratic if we did that. So I hope that the president does not miss the opportunity again to send a clear signal to his government and to have a review of all of those people who were terminated for political reasons, if they're black and they support the PPP, or because of their race. That he should have a review of this to say, I'm going to correct this because I want my word and to match the practice in my government. And that he will lay out a clear pathway to social cohesion in his speech. I also hope that the president similarly will do the same in relation to his rhetoric about support for a green economy. You have known that this was a central part of our policy to transform Guyana. We argued that the low carbon development strategy was not about the environment, it was a development strategy, that the objective of it was to prove that we could find a new trajectory to growth at the same rate that we would have grown if we had taken a polluting pathway or a heavy carbon intensive pathway to growth. And Therefore, we developed the low carbon development strategy. The president further reinforced and supported this path by stating it is part of our constitution, something that we had put in the constitution, that the constitution of Guyana now says that we have to go down this route to manage our environment in a sustainable manner, to ensure that we pass on this rich legacy to our children and grandchildren, etc. The president then went on further to speak about the summit that they had on green energy in Washington, and about the absolute imperative of developing green energy, alternative sources of energy. And he said this is important for our future, but also for our industries. And then on the other hand, his government has killed a project for political reasons, not economic reasons, because until now they have not had the fact-based assessment of their Myla project. But we are prepared to debate this publicly, the technical aspect of a Myla, both from the numbers perspective and how good it is for our economy, and from the feasibility perspective. We can have a debate. They can put their best people up, and we will have an open debate and have the country decide whether this project was good. Not hide behind the rhetoric that there was some form of corruption in a Myla and it's not good for the country and we don't like the numbers. That's all talk. So they've killed a project that would have saved us at least $2 billion US dollars in 20 years at 2012 prices for oil and gas. That we would have bought power at 10 cents per kilowatt hour from a Myla, which is about what we are generating now at because of the drop in fuel prices. And they're busy negotiating secretly a power purchase deal from a technology that is not tested and that would not be baseload, because we're buying energy, not capacity, from a solar, from a wind farm. And that's all being done in secrecy with no technical feasibility or debate done. How are we, and that project would have decarbonized 94% of our energy needs in this country. It was the biggest green project that would have had the biggest impact on our emission of greenhouse gases. It cannot be replaced by planting trees. The green economy is not about planting trees. It is an economic concept. And further to the money earned because of the arrangement that we had on the forestry deal. So much is happening. We're not even sure whether they have started discussing a successor agreement to the one we had with Norway, because that is to expire. Whether all of the money has been paid, because it was a deal for $250 million. We're not sure about the 16 projects that we had, where they are in terms of implementation on these in the green economy or the Norwegian agreement. We're not sure about anything anymore about the green economy. They have no conceptual framework, no vision, except in implementing in a haphazard way some of the things we have left haphazard, no form, nothing about the future. What are the parameters of the negotiations with Norway? They think that just going to New York to sign a new agreement that was forged in Paris, and you saw, I've always been a skeptic. There have been like lots of praise about this agreement, and I've always argued it's suboptimal from what we should have been done in Copenhagen, because it does not give a clear pathway to financing for developing countries. I've always argued that these lofty goals and these pledges like made on the INDCs, that they mean nothing to the developing world unless they're followed by real help. And the world has already agreed that the disproportionate impact of climate change would be felt by us in the developing world. But there's no predictable flow of resources to the developing world. I chaired a group that did a study for the Commonwealth heads of government, and I presented that report in Sri Lanka to the heads. And that it showed that even the pledges made in Copenhagen, the 30 billion over 3 years, were not delivered, although the developed world keeps saying that they delivered the money. It was not delivered when you actually trace the flows. And so this agreement cannot be our strategy. In fact, it has shifted the burden of being responsible to many developing countries. So that can't work, and agreement can't work. The country has to have its own strategy. We had it. They have not spoken about a national strategy. So again, I hope that the president, if these are the two big planks of his government's trust, social cohesion and a green economy, then he will be a bit more specific about the strategy for the future. The president then said, we have returned local democracy. Now that we have declared these townships, and by the way, the townships are made, is there something? Yeah. The townships were declared without consultation with the communities, and that is horrible. That should have never been done. That is against good governance. It's against all the things that people have lectured that we shouldn't do. That's one. They just impose these townships on these communities without regards for what will happen to them. Secondly, this grew out of a project that started years ago. I think I was still maybe in the Ministry of Finance or the presidency, the early years of my presidency, called the Secondary Towns Infrastructure Project, where we had identified, and I've publicly spoken about making Bartica, Parika, Charity, Droseknol, all of these places townships, and that we were putting in infrastructure in these areas. So we started putting in infrastructure. If you go to Charity, you see we widened the roads, we put in the lights, we started paving the areas there. We did the same thing in Bartica, in Parika, in Bartica, and Droseknol. We believe that you had to put in basic infrastructure and better services before you declare the areas township. What they did was just a political issue, no focus on better services. So when the president said that now that they are declared townships in his speech, the people can look forward to better services. How? I keep asking how. And are their taxes going to go up? So what we feel, it will bring greater hardships to people rather than bringing better services to them. And when he says that because of this you would have a proliferation of small businesses, we're asking how are the two connected? How could this local government election and the townships, declaration of townships, have an effect on small businesses, the proliferation of small businesses, when your government just increased taxes and fees on 140 licenses, etc., which are anti-small business. Many of them, if you have a dray cart or a small store, a shop, or anything of that sort, you have to pay more taxes from 12,000 to 65,000 if you go around with a little vehicle to sell some clothing. How? These are small businesses. So the president's rhetoric in Parliament about small businesses don't match policy. In fact, the policies as outlined in the budget are anti-small businesses. These small businesses now have to line up at GRA, and they have to then show that they paid taxes for the past 7 years before they get their licenses renewed. How could this be a big fillip to the development of small businesses when in the name of cleaning the city, you're decimating the livelihood of people who have very little choices but selling outside of the market and earning to feed their family, like Stabroek Market and many of the other markets, Rosignol, many of the markets around the country. And those taxi drivers who had worked there for 20 years in front of Banks DIH and at Stabroek Market Square, that they're chased off of the square unceremoniously and can't earn a living. Many of them have debts in the bank, and families to feed. I said to them, and I will say again to all the taxi drivers and the vendors, we are not against cleaning up the city. We support the government in cleaning the city. We will support that. And we will support the government if it is focused on removing criminal elements from the Stabroek Market Square, because I heard that as an excuse. But you can do both things without taking away people's livelihood. You can't talk in abstract about the development of small businesses. Those are small businesses. Those are the people who sometimes graduate from there into the big stores. We know half of the people now on Regent Street and Robb Street were once stall holders in some of the markets in the early days. That's how they grow. And so the rhetoric again about value added that the president spoke in Parliament cannot match the policies of his government. And so I do hope that we will not miss the opportunity on the 25th, the night of the 25th, to talk about defining the course of the future, where our country is actually going, and how people are going to be treated. Are their rights going to be respected? That whilst you support going after people for money laundering and tax evasion, that we cannot go back to those days when there is no due process. Police cannot run into people's home at 2 in the morning and 3 in the morning businessman place and seize their assets without a court order. You cannot do that. Cannot use the army in a surreptitious, secretive way to perform civilian tasks, because the Defense Act and our Constitution are clear about their role. These are the things, the separations that the president needs to speak about. And I was just handed, Mr. Harmon came to my office and he handed me a copy of the Commission of Inquiry report into the public service, and I hope that would be addressed too, about relations with our public service. Maybe those are the kinds of things in a very specific way. Otherwise, it is just pontificating, wallowing in a introspection of our past without talking about where we are going. Because as the president correctly pointed out, we need to go places in the future, use the next 50 years in a different way. He said, let's get away from the ethnic arithmetic, let's get away from all of these things and work towards a different society. And so we will be listening carefully to that speech to see if it addresses all of these issues and many more that I'm sure that our people are waiting to hear answers for. Now, I have seen we're missing a huge opportunity. Some time ago, I spoke about this. I think it was in the parliament in one of my speeches. I said that this government lives in a make-believe world, a cocoon. They believe that if they don't know about something, that it is not happening, and that it is within their circle. And they're so shut out from the rest of the society and from voices of reason, and so arrogant about it, even when confronted with good advice from civil society and everywhere else. They believe that people are out to get them and that they have answers to everything. So we have now I've seen a religious leader, and it's utterly despicable for people of the cloth, religious leaders, to mislead congregants and others. But we've heard now recently that the economy has slowed down because drug proceeds are not flowing freely through the economy. And then the Minister of Finance latches on to this excuse, and he repeats it. And if they actually believe that, as I think they do believe that, then he misses the opportunity to address the real issues surrounding our economy, because he lives in this make-believe world that it's only because of drug proceeds that flowing less through the economy, that's why things are now going well in the economy. So why should I do anything about it? Everything else is perfect. And so he misses this huge opportunity. Now, I thought that since 15,000 ounces of gold were smuggled out under the PPP every week, and that this new government has blocked this now, 15,000 ounces multiplied by 52 weeks would deliver something like 750,000 ounces over that. And so at the price of gold, that's $800 million more in the economy. $800 million more of legal flows to the economy, US dollars. That's a lot of money. That's $160-something billion more. So I thought that because they're blocking it, then this money would be here for us to spend. It's not the leakage. And you remember Professor Clive Thomas said on the illicit flows that another about 30% or something like that of our money was being siphoned off and going abroad. So I assume they blocked this too. So this would be checking the BOP, from the BOP, balance of payment. So we'd have another maybe $150 billion there to spend, since they blocked the illicit flows out of the country. And you recall that they would have saved $28 billion that the PPP was supposed to steal every year from public procurement. And so they would have much more money in the economy to spend. And they saved $200 million so far in procurement of oil because the oil prices tumble. That's another $40 billion available to the country. Combined, you would have probably close to half a trillion dollars. $500 billion more to spend in the economy. So why are we talking about reduction in flows? In fact, you should have been talking about an increase flows through the economy, money available to people. But it's all fake, because they've made this whole case about drug proceeds. So, you know what he's effectively saying? That if you can't pay your loans now, that if you can't pay your loans somehow, and things are bad for you, you're losing jobs, people not buying in the stores anymore because they have lost their jobs, that your hardships are determined and they're slowing the economy because you didn't get the drug proceeds flowing to you. These people don't understand the reality of what's happening. Now, why are we in the doldrums? Why are we in economic decline? Is it possible that even with the world situation where there is a slowdown in demand, is it possible for a country like Guyana to prosper? Now, we have pretty strong growth in the United States of America, and even though growth has slowed in some countries in the world, they still have positive growth rates. Even in Europe, many of the countries have come out of recession. In 2007 and 2008, the world was in recession. The United States of America, Europe, Japan, many of the emerging markets. But we grew. We grew through that period. Although there was a weakening of global demand, everything of this sort. We grew through that period. I believe it's still possible to grow rapidly given the world situation, the hand we are dealt with. And what is even more positive is that we have had a reprieve, a respite, because as I said before, our fuel bill has tumbled from $500 odd million to just $300 odd million. Tumbled. And so that is money available in the country. At least $40 billion, $200 million more that we have to spend. But why did things slow down so precipitously? One can always argue that the economy you saw a slower year, sometimes you have a lower growth rate, etc. in a given year. And if you examine the period under the PPP, you'd see some years you have high growth rates and some years they're all positive, but they dip a bit, then they go up again. So it's not going to be uniform. But what was important, and so in the latter days, they can always argue, well, things may have slowed down a bit because we are not spending all the money we should have spent in the economy. The government stimulus was not there. They cut $90 billion from the budget in 3 years. That was not spent in the economy. And so it could have slowed things down. But why this precipitous drop? How can you explain it? And it can only be explained by, as I said before, one reason is that the people do not have confidence in this government. And every single day, they do things to erode that confidence further. And so I'm not going to just leave that hanging. I'm going to tell you about the things they're doing to erode confidence in the economy. The first thing is that private property. Forget Pradoville. They can go after Pradoville and say they focus only on politicians, trying to go after properties of politicians. That's fine. But when you start going after people who have had leases and they're growing crops on the land for 20 years, taking back those leases from them. When you go after people who have had title land, bought title land, and we have cases, I can give you specific cases, names of people, because we have filed and the cases in the court on their behalf, When you go after people who have a title or a transport, when you try to take back people who had allotted plots of land by the government and who have paid their money or have received a title, but they can't build now because of hardships or something. When you take away people's core home who are living in these homes after their title, paid all their money there, then what you're saying is that private property is not sacred anymore. And that is one thing. We had amended our constitution. We put a constitutional guarantee to private property because we came out of a history when on the Burnham era, people's properties were seized without fair market compensation. And it sent a bad signal to the private sector. And so once again, people don't feel safe about private property. This government could take anything, whether it's title land or your transport or anything of that sort or a lease. They can do whatever they want. That's the first signal. The second thing is ambiguity about the tax regimes. So we are, in this week, we are meeting investors. They've come from all over the world, and we're promoting, about Guyana, and come to invest here. Then out of the blues, the president makes a statement that we are going to reduce incentives to foreign investors when they're here. And so he is basing this on some report they have that was parked since 2002 that talks about a high level of remissions. Now, these remissions are given not only to foreign investors, but they're given to many local companies. So Banks DIH, for example, if you bring in, say, cheese may not be zero rated. I'm just using an example. Cheese. So, but if cheese comes in now by a manufacturer as an input into another commodity, they will then get cheese as a raw material. The tax is remitted. So you can't zero rate it because it's for everybody. It's general consumption. But because it is part of a raw material for a manufacturer, and they would end up paying taxes on the final product, because if you charge taxes on the raw material as well as the final product, you have a cascading of the tax. So that's why you have to remit it. This is what happens. That's why the remission levels are there. And so they see this figure, and then suddenly, ill-advised, he makes a statement of that nature. Now, what do you think if you're a foreign investor? I will say, whenever you're finished fixing your incentive regime, don't tell me you're going to change it. I will wait until you finish fixing it. And then I will come to Guyana to see if it is favorable enough. In 1 week and one statement, he has killed every promotional activity we've done on investment. Because why would people come now if the tax concessions and the incentives to come here are going to be changed against, not in their favor, but against them? Why? It doesn't make sense. And so how do you expect private sector to invest? So in the budget again, quietly, the Minister of Finance reinstitutes the 16% value added tax on heavy equipment, machinery. Now, people don't consume this. They don't drive a tractor or a combine on the road, or a skidder or a bulldozer. They use this in the productive sector. Now they have to pay 16% VAT. So a miner now will have to spend millions of dollars more, millions, to bring in a bulldozer or an excavator The rice farmers will have to spend more if they're buying a tractor combine. How could this be pro-investment? How could raising taxes on all of these people, the private sector, be pro-investment? So that's the second signal. They're not clear. They're still evolving. The government shoots itself in the foot. One person says one thing that's pro-investment, another one says something that annuls or eliminates, annihilates all of the efforts that they have made. They have not, it is noteworthy that they have not received a single major investment for the future. And they criticize us a lot, but then I see them talking about Giffland Mall now and stuff. One minister was talking about how this is a sign of confidence. Well, the Giffland Mall, the land they got under the PP, most of the construction was done there. The new construction, it's the one in front by the road. That project started under the PP. They bought the land for $20 million an acre just there. And so that project was under the PPP too, the new mall that is being built by the roadside at Leandal. The new supermarket, not supermarket, Star One's building too, started under the PP. Almost every construction, Teleperformance, PPP. Which major investment? They're so desperate that they're saying now 4G. They brought 4G to Guyana as part of their achievement. Now desperate. It's like we saying we brought cell phones because when we took office, nobody had, very few people, you had about 300 instruments, cell phones. Now you got about 700,000. So people should say we brought cell phones to Guyana. These are the part of the people's business plan, so desperate for achievements that they are even claiming the people 4G service that they had planned a long time. And they've delayed a whole year in bringing the legislation for the liberalization of the sector. They've blocked it at committees and committees, the same thing that Digital and the others wanted. They've delayed that to liberalize the sector so that people here have greater bandwidth at a cheaper cost, greater competition. That's what they should be focusing on. So that's the signal. Then the politicization. These are signals to the private sector of the revenue authority. So you've seen it's a tar. And now what has happened, it is a justification, basically a vindication that what he said was accurate. So that happened. Then the chairman of the board, he is political too. And then this DDL matter. And you know what? This media is missing the biggest story, economic story in our history, the history of Guyana. And I think they do so because many of the newspapers receive ads from this company, and they don't want to offend. But this matter, apart from the 10 points, this matter, I've looked at the numbers again. It's not going to end at 16 billion. Remember I said conservatively? This will be somewhere near $60 billion of implication. And I'm not stupid to say this. It will cost the Treasury some $60 billion. Let's consider that comparing to what the school kids were getting, how much that cost. 1.67, 167,000 by 10,000, $1.67 billion, and we couldn't afford that for the school kids. But we have made a decision that will cost the Treasury close to $60 billion. And you will see it unfold in a few weeks, in the upcoming weeks. And you're missing the biggest story ever. That this was done, and I've asked the president to inquire into this. Clearly, he has not done anything. The government has gone quiet on it, so I have to conclude that the government knows about this, they're complicit in it at all levels, because I've not seen any response from the president or anyone else. about this matter. This matter, we didn't want that to happen. We should have been happy because we can always use it against them. But that is how much money it will cost this treasury. And watch how the story will unfold over the next few months. Watch it as other companies come forward now to claim their refunds, because they would have to get it. Because once you settle on one basis for one company, so it's not what they have done by politicizing the GRA. They remove something that businesses hold sacred, a level playing field. If I am in the same sector as you are, I want to be treated exactly the same way. You can't treat banks DIH one way and DDL another way and another person. Then they would lose competitive advantage in the sector. And so this is the third thing, the third signal that this government has sent to private businesses. Very, very important. When you politicize revenue earning agencies, when you remove the level playing field from people, when your taxation policy doesn't have clarity, it's ambiguous. When you go after private property, when you send people into the business community home at night, what do you expect? It's not drug money. It is people nobody wants to invest. Nobody wants to invest. Those from abroad are waiting to see what will happen, and the local ones are saying, we're not doing. So go to the markets, you see the slope there, and talk to people. Go to the real estate dealers and you'll talk to them. Look at where the construction activity, they're trying to bully people into building now, but that's slow too. Go to the mining sectors, except in the 2 new gold mines that started operating that were built under the PP. That's where most of the growth. Find out how many small gold miners have had difficulties. Talk to the rice farmers, talk to the sugar workers who have had no salary increase. Talk to the loggers in Kwakwani and Aichuni, who were by Shanlin and some others were buying their logs. And these are community forests that we gave to people. So when 300 of them came together from Kwakwani or Aichuni, they got a concession and they work together and they earn a living. Many of them can't sell their logs. Go to Kwakwani. You would see, because Rusal has shifted now their operations and the logging is down, what people are saying there. It's not drug money. They're missing an opportunity to address the real issue. And so the government has no plan. I can conclude that the government has no plan to fix the economy. It's fixable. They have no vision about where it's going. They're just doing things like in a as I said before, haphazard way, etc. If you want to do some audits, and since we're talking about 1 year, we can start by auditing the city council and finding out how much waivers they give. Recently, the billions of dollars of waiving taxes and the 800 million they spent, we can ask how they have tendered the work, who got the 10 contracts, etc. We can start by auditing the Durban Park project. We can audit the purchase of drugs over the last year. That would be interesting to see. I'm very happy, given the saga, the Bobby Ramroop saga. It would be very interesting to see the audit. We can audit the Feathers Lloyd deal. We can audit the settlement, the one-off taxes, settlement on the environmental tax, the purchase of milk. We can do that. We can audit that. We can audit the power purchase agreement from IPA that they're negotiating, the fertilizer deal, the 16 million write-off. We should be doing some audits too, and the president likes audits. In just 1 year, I can list about 20 things for him to audit that he'll find real corruption in. Real corruption. No, and it doesn't have to be witch hunted. He can choose external auditors this time, not people sympathetic to them. So that's 1 year record for you. nothing on the economy, no vision, lots of things to audit. The guy Suko, I see they said they need more money now, a lot more money, but I saw 30,000 tons. They were boasting about how well they were doing, and that was the cane that we left in the field. So now the 30,000 tons shortfall, of course you need more money if you said you're producing X amount of cane, and you produce 30,000 tons less in the first crop. He think, the chairman of the board thinks we're stupid. He said it has nothing to do with the shortfall. It's just that we need more money because we spent up the rest of the money, so many needs. If you produce 30,000 less and you're selling at a price, you'll get more money in the system. So, because it's the same staff you have, it's the same overhead, everything, you're just producing less. So we're looking at that. Maybe I should stop because I have like a ton of other things. ICT plan, the crime. I wanted to talk about crime. Can you imagine? Look at this, their achievement sheet. I want the country who wasn't seeing this to look at this thing. Isn't this a desperate, pathetic attempt of this government to scrape everything they could see under the sun? Listen to their achievements. As I said before, 4G, right? Free driver licenses for senior citizens. Now, let's give the converse of that. What did they do? They took away the water subsidy and the electricity subsidy from the pensioners. More zero-rated VAT items. This is against a promise to reduce VAT from 16% to 12%. They're saying more zero-rated VAT items now. But they're collecting more, about a few $1 billion more on VAT this year. But they're more zero-rated VAT items. Fishermen protected against piracy. The minister went and met the fishermen. He cussed them up in his typical style. They haul your A style. That's what he basically told the fishermen up there when they asked for some help. They spoke about lower electricity tariffs. Of course, the fuel costs came down significantly. What they didn't say is they didn't adjust the prices until we kicked a big stink up. But in the meantime, they've built up a war chest that they collected something like $12 billion more from people that they shouldn't have collected because they should have passed on the benefits immediately. Or, well, not immediately, a few months later. They did not, so they built up a war we raised, I think,